there's a parallel between the mistaken attempt to achieve enlightenment by imagining images of the spirit rather than delving into the depths of the soul. So there's a parallel between that and attempting to enforce social change from the top down, as opposed to embedding oneself into the local realm of society and producing change in that way. So I think the reason people have this attitude, well, there's multiple aspects to the attitude that I'm trying to discuss, but the reason people have one deep layer of this attitude is, when I say deep, I mean it's been there for a long time, at least 2,000 years. Because this process of trying to imagine the spirit has been around since Plato, perhaps in Socrates, or even before. So there's a background sense that enlightenment is achieved by envisaging spirit, as opposed to delving into the soul. And delving into the soul is like letting go when you're in the ocean and letting yourself sink, because when you relax, you'll notice that you're buoyant and you'll rise to the surface, and then you'll be swept up by a wave and you'll be driven along. And in the same way, if you let go of your strivings towards the spirit and you allow yourself to sink into the soul, you'll be brought up by your own buoyancy, and that buoyancy is the natural consciousness of your mind. If you let go of it and you try and sink into unconsciousness, into the soul, you'll naturally float to a middle ground. Now, it's only by becoming familiar with this process of buoyancy and with the waves that you can make any progress towards the realm of spirit. So it's only by delving into the animal and assimilating it to consciousness that spirit can never be attained, where spirit is consciousness. And in the same sense, it's not possible to change the way a society works without sinking into the local social fabric, because that's the reality. The actual building blocks of society are the interpersonal groups that can be perceived properly by human beings. Human beings are not designed to understand interpersonal groups of millions or billions of people. We're only designed to understand interpersonal groups of a couple hundred people at a push. So it's only on that level that we can really utilize our social instincts, which are our most fantastic instincts, our most powerful intellectual faculties. So by delving into a local social situation and going into it consciously, a person is able to utilize their greatest faculties, their distinctively human facility of understanding social groups. And so the advantage is that a person trying to understand a group of 100 or 200 is going to have all of their social instincts on their side, and will be able to develop an incredible knowledge of that group. Whereas a person who is trying to understand a country, New Zealand, 4 million people, 4.5 million people, from Caucasus, they're not going to be able to use their instincts. They're only using mathematical knowledge or economic or political theory, but they can't really utilize their social instincts because even though the topic of their expertise is ultimately social, their day-to-day business and dealings are with highly abstract theoretical materials. So now obviously the only reason politicians are politicians in the first place is because they want to get something monetarily, or they want to gain power. They don't want to understand society as a whole. That's not why they got there. They haven't. Nobody is mistaken. Nobody thinks that the best way to understand society as a whole is to achieve the highest office in the land, because that just removes you from society, from the local, on the ground, real element. So while you're granted special knowledge to the overall trends that are influenced by the leaders, you are just as isolated from the perceivable realities of the social world. So you're so far away from it that you can't understand it. No one is deceived that the best way to understand human social interactions is by engaging in all the different realms of human behavior on the ground, in person, and not by looking at statistics. No one is deceived of this. But there is a perception in the background, and it's not the only contributing factor to this, but it is a perception in the background that to achieve enlightenment, you envisage images of spirit rather than delving into the soul. And so there's an instinct, or an impulse, or not an impulse, an intuition that to achieve a functional society means producing change in the upper echelons. But that's simply not something that human beings are equipped for. Our greatest facilities are social. Our intelligence is social. So we may as well play to our strength, considering that our mathematical, economic, political, theoretical understanding of society is not going to result in anything useful. It's so far beyond our comprehension. Of course, this doesn't mean that politicians are misguided, because obviously they're out for their own personal gain. So they are actually accomplishing a very local goal. They just happen to do it in a public domain. Their influence is very public, but their goals are very personal. It might be something as simple as money or power, but it's still a personal goal. So their goal is very local to them, because their goal is their own personal power, or money, or wealth. It's the common perception that but then maybe that's just one element. This whole idea that people are misperceiving the role of the upper echelons. Maybe it's only one element of people's understanding. Only one element of people's understanding of it is informed by the Platonic ideal, and the Socratic ideal, and the Christian ideal, and the rest is, well, there are plenty of other factors in in society, in media that play a role, and with just typical hierarchical thinking. Naturally, the upper echelons do have more influence. That is how we've set up our society. And I don't think that's a result of Plato. That's a result of our human hierarchical structure. I say human, but animal hierarchical structure, which the animals have. It could just be a misunderstanding in the sense that we don't we have more instinct for the 200 person social dynamic than we do for the 4.5 million person social dynamic, but we have no intuition for when our facilities are sufficient. So we don't know. So we are incredibly competent at certain types of processing, and very, very flawed at other types of processing. But we have no intuition for when we're in our realm of competence. Or we do, certainly, sometimes. So if I present somebody with a complex mathematical equation, they're going to say, this is beyond my realm of competence. This is beyond me, my facilities. But there are plenty of situations where we feel that we are not beyond our facilities, but we are. And it's when we think that we are within our realm of competence. But in fact we aren't, that we make mistakes. And it can be very difficult to tell when we're within our realm of competence.